Chapter 14. I Become a Known Fugitive. Hey everyone, welcome back to the story. I'm so glad you could join me for the next part of Rick Riordan's Lightning Thief. We are approaching some of my favorite chapters. Enjoy. I was pretty sure this was it. I was a 630-foot pancake demigod on the bottom of the Mississippi River. Except, I wasn't. I was sitting on the muddy riverbed, completely unharmed. Not only was I not dead, I wasn't even wet. My clothes were perfectly dry. My lungs weren't screaming for air. I was breathing normally. The chimera poison that had been burning through my veins was completely gone. I checked my pocket and Riptide was there, disguised as a ballpoint pen again. My father had answered my prayer. He'd saved me. As I sat there in the murky depths, a shimmering light appeared in front of me. It solidified into the shape of a woman with long, dark hair and a dress made of pure water. She was beautiful, but her eyes were sad. She was a Nereid, a spirit of the sea. "You have a message from your father," she said, her voice echoing in my mind, not through the water. "He is proud of you, but he cannot help you directly. The gods are forbidden from showing such favoritism." She continued, "He says you must go to the beach in Santa Monica when you reach Los Angeles. You must go there before you descend into the underworld. It is his will." Then she gave me one last, cryptic piece of advice. "And Percy," she warned, her sad eyes full of meaning, "do not trust the gifts you have been given." And with that, she dissolved back into the water, leaving me alone in the silent, muddy dark. I shot towards the surface like a torpedo. I burst out of the water, gasping, even though I didn't need to. A crowd of people, police, paramedics, reporters, were all staring at me from the riverbank. "He's alive!" someone yelled. "The boy's alive!" They pulled me ashore, wrapping me in blankets I didn't need, asking me a million questions. Then I saw it. A news reporter was doing a live broadcast, and my face was on the screen next to a caption that read, "Troubled teens sought in Gateway Arch explosion." The reporter was telling a wild story about how a disturbed young boy, me, was last seen on the observation deck before a freak explosion blew a hole in the side of the monument. They were painting me as a fugitive, a terrorist. The mortals had seen the chaos, but they couldn't see the monsters. So they blamed me. I had to get out of there. I slipped away from the paramedics, my head down, and melted into the crowds of onlookers. I found Annabeth and Grover a few blocks away, hiding in an alley. They looked like they'd seen a ghost. "Percy!" Annabeth cried, throwing her arms around me. "We can't believe it. We saw you fall." "I'm okay," I said, my head still spinning. "But we have to go. Now the whole city's looking for me." We managed to sneak back to the Amtrak station, pulling our hoods low and avoiding the police patrols. Miraculously, our train was still there, delayed because of the electrical storm. We got back on board, found an empty car, and collapsed into our seats as the train lurched forward, pulling us out of St. Louis. I told them everything, about breathing underwater, about the Nereid, about the message from my father, and about the warning. "Do not trust the gifts," Annabeth repeated, her brow furrowed. "What gifts?" "The helmet from my dad, maybe," she mused. "No, that's my gift, not yours." Then we all looked at my backpack, where Luke's gift was stashed. The flying shoes, a gift from Hermes, Luke's dad, a gift that could carry me right up into Zeus's angry domain. "Maybe," I said, a sick feeling growing in my stomach. "Maybe Luke isn't our friend." The thought was too awful to consider. Luke had been the first person at camp to be genuinely nice to me, but the Nereid's warning was clear. We were on a quest where a friend was prophesied to betray me, and we had just been warned not to trust our gifts. As the train rattled on into the night, I stared out the window at my own reflection, a boy who was now famous for all the wrong reasons, a known fugitive. And for the first time, I felt a real cold stab of fear. This quest wasn't just about monsters anymore. It was about secrets and lies, and I had no idea who I could trust. And that's all for this chapter. If you're enjoying the story, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the great things I plan to achieve. Chapter 15, A God Buys Us Cheeseburgers. Spoken intro, narrator/Percy. Narrator. Hey, welcome back. It's so great to have you here for Chapter 15. Let's jump right back into the chaos. Intro music is a low, gritty, electric guitar riff with the sound of a rumbling motorcycle. It fades. Voiceover as Percy. We finally reached Denver, feeling like actual fugitives. My face was on the front page of every newspaper at the station. The headline read, "12-year-old vandal still at large." They were getting my age right at least. We had to move fast. We were starving, and the smell of food led us to a big chrome diner. We were trying to keep a low profile, but the moment we walked in, I felt a new kind of dread. Sitting in one of the booths was a man who made every nerve in my body scream danger. He was huge, dressed head to toe in black leather. He had a scarred, cruel face, wraparound sunglasses, and fiery red hair cut in a military flat top. A massive knife was strapped to his boot. He looked like every bad guy from every action movie rolled into one. When he stood up and walked towards our booth, I thought we were done for. He slid into the seat next to me, smelling of leather and dried blood. "So, you're the famous Percy Jackson," he said, his voice a low rumble. Annabeth and Grover were frozen, their faces pale. Annabeth bowed her head respectfully. "Lord Ares," she stammered. "What an honor." Ares, the god of war. He smirked, taking off his sunglasses. Where his eyes should have been, there were just empty sockets filled with fire, pure, swirling flames of hatred and violence. He quickly put the glasses back on. "I hear you're on a quest," he said, snapping his fingers. The waitress, who hadn't even seemed to notice him, appeared with a platter of burgers and fries. "Eat up. I've got a proposition for you." He knew all about us, about the Bolt, about Hades, about my mom. He taunted me about my father, calling him a wimp. He said he supported war, any war, and a fight between Zeus and Poseidon would be the biggest show in 3,000 years. The only reason he was helping us, he claimed, was because the real thief had stolen something of his too. "I need you to do me a little favor," he said, leaning in. "My girlfriend and I were at a water park just up the road. I might have left my shield there. I need you to go get it for me." Annabeth looked horrified. "But that park is closed." "So?" Ares shrugged. "It was a date. Things got a little heated. We had to leave in a hurry. Now there's a little problem with the park." The little problem, he explained, was that the park was a trap. His girlfriend was Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and her husband was Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths. Hephaestus had a habit of setting traps to catch his wife with Ares. The whole park was probably rigged. "Why can't you get it yourself?" I asked, trying to sound braver than I felt. Ares's fiery eyes flared behind his glasses. "Because I'm not going to be seen walking into my own girlfriend's husband's trap, you little punk. It's embarrassing. You're heroes. This is what you do. Go get my shield and I'll get you a ride west. And I'll give you some information about your mom." That was the line that got me. Information about my mom. We were stuck. We needed a ride, and you don't say no to the god of war unless you have a death wish. I agreed. He gave us a backpack filled with cash, fresh clothes, and snacks, then pointed us outside. "Your ride is waiting," he said. The ride was a semi-truck with a logo on the side that read, "Kindness International, Humane Zoo Transport." It sounded nice enough, but when the driver opened the back for us, the smell hit me like a wall. It was a prison on wheels. The back of the truck was filled with tiny, filthy cages. Inside were a zebra, an albino lion, and a strange-looking antelope. They were all malnourished, miserable, and scared. The floor was a mess of old fast food wrappers and droppings. Grover was heartbroken. He walked up to the zebra's cage and began to speak to it in a series of quiet bleats and clicks. He was having a conversation with them. I couldn't understand the words, but I could understand the feeling. Grover's face was full of sadness and pity. He told us the animal's story. They had been captured by smugglers and sold to a circus that didn't want them. Now they were being transported to a new zoo in Vegas with no food or water. "This is how humans treat their own world," Grover said, his voice thick with disgust. This is what Pan was trying to save. The back of the truck rumbled down the highway, carrying us towards a deadly trap at an abandoned water park. We were on a mission for a god we hated, in a truck full of abused animals, with the fate of the world somehow resting on our shoulders. And I had a feeling things were about to get a whole lot worse. Spoken outro, narrator/Percy. Narrator. And that's where we'll leave it for this one. Thanks for listening along with us. We'll find out what kind of trap Hephaestus set for us in the next chapter. Chapter 16, we take a zebra to Vegas. Spoken intro, narrator/Percy. Narrator. All right, thanks for tuning in for this one. I hope you're ready for another brush with death, courtesy of the gods' messy family drama. Intro music is creepy and suspenseful, with the distant sound of carnival music playing out of tune. It fades. Voiceover as Percy. The zoo transport truck dropped us off at an abandoned water park on the outskirts of Denver. The place was a ruin. The water slides were cracked and covered in graffiti. The wave pool was a swamp of green slime, and the whole park had a feeling of forgotten sadness. Ares had told us his shield was in the thrill ride of love. We found it easily. It was a tunnel of love ride with a heart-shaped entrance and little Cupid statues that had all been vandalized. Annabeth, being a daughter of the goddess of architecture and strategy, immediately saw the trap. "Hephaestus," she whispered, pointing at the tripwires and the strange metal nozzles hidden in the walls. "This whole ride is a trap designed to catch Ares and Aphrodite together. It's probably rigged to broadcast their capture all over Olympus." "So we're not going in, right?" Grover bleated. But we had no choice. Ares' shield was sitting right there in one of the little pink boats floating in the tunnel. Annabeth and I would have to go in and get it. Grover, with his hooves, would have to wait outside. We got into a boat and floated into the dark, creepy tunnel. The water was oily, and little animatronic cupids sang off-key love songs as we passed. We found the shield propped up on one of the seats. I grabbed it, and that's when everything went wrong. The tripwire we just crossed sprang. A golden net shot up, blocking the entrance behind us. Then from thousands of tiny holes in the walls, they started pouring out. Spiders. Millions of tiny metallic spiders swarming towards us. I was ready to fight, but Annabeth wasn't. She was completely frozen, her face a mask of pure terror. She let out a scream that was more primal than anything I'd ever heard. "Spiders!" she shrieked. I can't." I didn't understand. This was Annabeth, the fearless strategist. But seeing those spiders, she was completely paralyzed. The automatons were designed by Hephaestus, and spiders are his sacred animal. And for a child of Athena, spiders are the ultimate nightmare, a reminder of the old feud between their mother and Arachne. The spiders were crawling into our boat. I had to do something. I closed my eyes and concentrated on the water, on that tug in my gut. I felt the water respond. Our little boat shot forward like a speedboat, plowing through the swarms of metal spiders. We flew through the tunnel, heading for the big drop at the end. As we plunged down the ramp, another golden net shot up from the bottom, ready to catch us. I roared and a massive wave rose up from the pool below us. It crashed over the net, pushing our boat right over the barrier. We flew through the air and slammed into the pavement outside, shattering our boat into 1,000 pieces of pink plastic. We were alive, and we had the shield. Suddenly, the air shimmered. We were on TV. A giant holographic screen appeared above the ride, showing our terrified faces. The broadcast was live to Mount Olympus. The show was called Hephaestus TV, and the god himself was doing a grumpy voiceover, complaining that he'd caught 2 punk kids instead of his cheating wife. Then the screen went dark. Ares was there, leaning on his motorcycle, looking very pleased with himself. Not bad, kid, he said, taking the shield from me. Not bad at all. As promised, he told us our ride was waiting. The same zoo transport truck, now headed for Las Vegas. Before we got on, I looked at Grover, and we had the same thought. We couldn't leave those animals. I uncapped Riptide and sliced the locks off their cages. Grover raised his hands and spoke a satyr's blessing for them, a prayer to the wild for their safety. The zebra, the lion, and the antelope bolted from the truck and vanished into the night. "You're soft, kid," Ari said, but he didn't seem angry. He just tossed me the backpack full of supplies. "You got guts. Now listen up." He leaned in close. "I heard you were worried about your mom. She's not dead." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "I mean she was taken. Someone is holding her, trying to use her as leverage against you. So you better not fail this quest." He smirked. "Now get going. You've got a long way to go." We climbed into the back of the now empty truck. My mind was reeling. My mom wasn't dead. She was a prisoner. The prophecy echoed in my head. You shall fail to save what matters most in the end. Was that what it meant? As the truck rumbled towards Vegas, I looked at my friends. We had survived another trap, but the game had just gotten a lot more complicated and a lot more personal. Spoken outro, narrator/Percy. Narrator, and that's a wrap on that chapter. We survived the trap, but now we're heading to Vegas. What could possibly go wrong in a city like that, right? Find out with us next time. Chapter 17, We Shop for Waterbeds. Spoken intro, narrator/Percy. Narrator. Hey, thanks for joining me again. Our crazy road trip continues, and this time, we're diving headfirst into the madness of Las Vegas. Intro music is dreamy and disorienting, with the faint, cheerful sounds of slot machines and casino chatter. It fades. Voiceover as Percy. The zoo truck dropped us off right on the Las Vegas Strip. It was like landing on another planet. A whirlwind of neon lights, towering hotels, and people shuffling along like zombies from one casino to the next. We wandered into the Lotus Hotel and Casino because it looked like the nicest place around. The moment we stepped inside, the vibe changed. The air was cool and smelled faintly of lotus flowers. A doorman in a white uniform smiled at us, not like we were runaway kids, but like we were honored guests. "Welcome to the Lotus Casino," he said, handing us each a little green plastic card. "Your room is all set up. The card is a key and a credit card. It works on all the games and restaurants. Have fun." We were suspicious, but we were also exhausted. We took an elevator, a glass one that went up the side of the building, to our suite. It was bigger than my mom's apartment. It had a living room, 3 separate bedrooms, and a balcony with a hot tub overlooking the whole strip. The minibar was stocked with every snack and soda you could imagine. But the best part was the entertainment system. It was a giant flat-screen TV with every movie ever made, every video game ever released, and super fast internet. For a kid with ADH, it was paradise. We all agreed to stay for just a couple of hours, a quick shower, some real food, maybe 1 or 2 video games, and then we'd be on our way. I took a shower, changed into some fresh clothes from the closet, which were magically my exact size, and then dove into the game room. There were classic arcade games, laser tag, and virtual reality shooters. I played for a while, losing all track of time. Later, I found Annabeth glued to a giant 3D strategy game where she was designing her own city. She was in heaven. Grover was in a virtual reality hunting game, chasing after wild animals. I met some other kids in the arcade. One of them, a kid named Darren, told me he was from the 1970s. He was dressed like a disco reject. I thought he was joking. He said he'd only been in the casino for a few weeks. He was trying to get the high score on a game called Myth of Magic. Every now and then, a bellhop would come by with a tray of lotus flower cupcakes. They were delicious. They made you feel happy, content, and completely forget about everything else. I didn't think about my quest. I didn't think about the stolen bolt. I didn't think about my mom. All that mattered was the next level of the game. I don't know how long I was there. Days? It felt like a long, happy afternoon. But then something pulled me out of the fog. I saw a group of kids playing a shooter game, and one of them looked familiar. It was the kid, Darren. I asked him what year it was. He looked at me, confused. "It's 1977, man," he said. That's when the panic hit me. He'd been here for decades and thought it had only been a few weeks. The Lotus Casino wasn't a hotel, it was a trap, a place where time stood still, designed to make you forget your purpose, to make you stay forever. The lotus flowers in the air, the cupcakes, they were enchanted. I had to get my friends out. I found Grover first. It was like waking someone from a deep sleep. He was confused, arguing that he was just about to beat the game. I had to drag him away. Annabeth was even harder. She was in the middle of designing a perfect gleaming city. She didn't want to leave. I had to remind her about her dream, about going on a real quest, about seeing the real world. Slowly the fog began to clear from her eyes. We ran for the exit, ignoring the bellhops who tried to offer us more food and more games. We burst out the front doors, back into the harsh daylight. I asked a doorman what the date was. He looked at me funny. "It's June 20th, he said. My heart sank. June 20th. We had been in the Lotus Casino for 5 days. We had entered on June 15th. Our quest, our 10-day deadline to save the world, was almost over. We had only 1 day left to get the bolt, travel from Vegas to LA, and get it back to Olympus. We had failed. Of course, the deadline is looming, and the quest is reaching its final, most dangerous stage. I will ensure all instructions are followed. Here is the detailed voiceover script for Chapter 18. Chapter 18, Annabeth Does Obedience School. Spoken intro, narrator/Percy. Narrator. Hey, glad you're back for this one. We have just 1 day left to prevent a war between the gods, and our first stop is the beach. Seems like a weird place to go when you're in a hurry, right? Intro music is a frantic, driving beat, like a ticking clock. It fades into the sound of crashing ocean waves. Voiceover as Percy. We sprinted out of the Lotus Casino in a full-blown panic. We had 1 day. 1 day to get from Vegas to Los Angeles, find the entrance to the underworld, confront Hades, get the bolt, and get it back to Mount Olympus before the summer solstice deadline. We were doomed. We managed to flag down a taxi. I showed the driver all the cash we had left from Ares. "How far will this get us?" I asked. He whistled. It was enough to get us to LA. And so began the most stressful taxi ride of my life. We reached the coast of California just as the sun was setting. I told the driver to pull over at the Santa Monica Pier. I had to follow the Nereid's instructions. I didn't know why, but I knew it was important. I walked down the beach and straight into the Pacific Ocean. The waves should have knocked me over, but they parted around me. The water felt welcoming. The grime and exhaustion from our journey washed away. I felt strong again. I felt like I was home. Out of the deep, the same Nereid from the Mississippi River appeared, her form shimmering in the twilight. "Your father is proud of you," her voice echoed in my mind. "He has sent a gift to aid you in the world of the dead." She held out her hand, and in it were 3 milky white pearls. "Take these. When you are in great need, smash one at your feet. It will protect you. It will do what it is meant to do." She gave me one last piece of advice, her eyes full of a strange sorrow. "Remember, Percy, what belongs to the sea will always return to the sea." And then she was gone. I walked out of the ocean, holding the 3 pearls, my clothes completely dry. I now had a potential escape route from the underworld. We took another cab to West Hollywood, to the address I'd found in Medusa's office. I was expecting a recording studio, but the sign on the building read, Krusty's Waterbed Palace. The showroom was filled with dozens of waterbeds, all in different tacky styles. A giant of a man, at least 7 feet tall, with a leathery face and no hair, came out to greet us. "Welcome to Krusty's," he boomed. "You looking for a bed?" He immediately launched into the most aggressive sales pitch I'd ever heard. He insisted we try out the beds. I knew something was wrong. This had to be another monster, another trap. But he was blocking the door to the back room, where the real entrance must be. "Hey," he said, pointing at Annabeth and Grover. "You two look like you'd love our deluxe models. Right over here. Before they could protest, he'd coaxed them onto two separate beds at the back of the showroom. The second they lay down, thick ropes shot out from the sides of the beds, strapping them down tight. A perfect fit, Krusty roared with laughter. Almost. Annabeth and Grover struggled, but they were held fast. What do you mean, almost? Annabeth demanded. Krusty pulled out a giant double-bladed axe. Well, some people are too tall. For them, we have a little off the top and a little off the bottom. He grinned. But you two, you're too short. For that, we have the deluxe stretching feature. He held up a hand. Watch this. Ergo. Grover's bed started to stretch, pulling his arms and legs. He bleated in terror. I had to think fast. I couldn't fight this giant head-on. So I decided to play his game. Hey, Krusty, I said, trying to sound like a difficult customer. Your sales technique is terrible. You can't just stretch people. You have to show them how great the bed is first. Demonstrate it. The giant looked confused. Demonstrate? Yeah, get on one of the beds. Show me how it works. I'm not buying anything until I see a professional demonstration. He grumbled about lazy kids, but my challenge to his salesmanship had worked. He stomped over to a zebra print waterbed and lay down on it. See? Comfy. Now buy one. Wait, I said. Are your hands and feet inside the frame? He grumbled and adjusted himself. The second he was lying perfectly flat, I snapped my fingers. Ergo! Instantly, the rope shot out and lashed him to his own bed. He roared in frustration, struggling against his own trap. I uncapped Riptide and sliced Annabeth and Grover free. You're a smart kid, Krusty grunted, still struggling. I'm a son of Poseidon, I said. And you, Procrustes the Stretcher, have stretched your last customer. I swung my sword. He dissolved into dust, leaving behind a nasty smell and an empty set of ropes. We ran to the back room. There we found it. A black marble podium with a guest book for DOA recording studios, dead on arrival, and behind it, a dark, ominous-looking elevator. This was it, the entrance to the underworld. We had finally made it. Spoken outro. Narrator/Percy. Narrator. And there you have it. We made it to the entrance of the underworld. Thanks so much for sticking with us on this crazy trip. Don't forget to come back for the next chapter to see what's waiting for us down there. Of course, acknowledged. We're heading into the land of the dead now. Here is the detailed voiceover script for Chapter 19. Chapter 19, we find out the truth, sort of. Spoken intro, narrator/Percy. Narrator. All right, here we go. Thanks for coming along for the ride. This is it. We're officially heading into the underworld. Wish us luck. Intro music is low, somber and echoing, with the faint sound of whispers. It fades. Voiceover as Percy. The elevator that served as the entrance to the underworld was a dark, cold box with Muzak playing a funeral dirge. When the doors opened, we weren't in a basement. We were in a massive, crowded waiting room. The carpet was industrial gray. The ceiling was so high you couldn't see it, and the room was filled with people, or what used to be people. They were spirits, transparent and shimmering, all waiting in line. No one talked, no one moved. It was the saddest place I'd ever been. Behind a large desk, a figure was reading a book. He was tall and elegant, dressed in a beautiful Italian silk suit. His skin was pale, and his hair was long and blonde. He looked like a model, but his eyes were full of a deep, weary boredom. "You're not dead," he said without looking up from his book. "No, sir," I said. "Then you're not supposed to be here." He sighed, a sound like dead leaves skittering across pavement. "This is what I'm talking about. The living, thinking they can just waltz in here. Do you know how much I get paid? Do you think I have a dental plan?" He stood up. This was Karen, the ferryman of the dead. He refused to take us. He said he wasn't running a tour service. I tried to bribe him with the mortal cash from Aries' backpack. He just laughed. But then I remembered the golden drachmas I'd taken from Krusty's office. I poured a handful onto his desk. His eyes lit up. Real, solid gold. The currency of the gods. "Well now," he said, his tone changing slightly. "For that kind of money, you must have a very important story." I told him we were on a mission from the gods themselves, sent to see Lord Hades. I may have embellished a bit, suggesting Hades would be so pleased with us that he'd give Karen a big raise. That sealed the deal. He led us down to a dock on the shore of a black, oily river. The river Styx. It smelled like a sewer and was filled with stuff. Broken dolls, soggy diplomas, ripped wedding dresses, the dashed hopes and dreams of every human who had ever lived. We boarded his ferry, a long, crowded barge packed with the shimmering spirits of the dead. The journey across the river felt like an eternity. The only sound was the slow pull of Karen's staff and the whispers of the dead, faint as static. The sky above us wasn't a sky. It was a massive cave ceiling dripping with stalactites. We finally reached the far shore, a beach of black, volcanic sand. The spirits shuffled off the boat and towards a massive gate, where they were sorted into 3 lines. One line marked easy death was moving the fastest. The other 2 lines were for spirits seeking judgment, hoping to get into the paradise of Elysium, but knowing they could just as easily end up in the fields of punishment. And guarding it all was the biggest dog I had ever seen in my life. It was a Rottweiler, but one that was bigger than a grizzly bear, with 3 heads, each one growling and sniffing the air. Cerberus, the guardian of the underworld, and he could smell that we were alive. "He's going to attack," Grover whimpered. "We need a plan," Annabeth said, her mind racing. Then her eyes landed on a red rubber ball that had fallen out of her backpack, a souvenir from the water park. An idea sparked in her eyes. "I've been to obedience school," she said, as if that explained everything. Before I could stop her, she marched right up to the 3-headed monster. "Hey, boy," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "See the ball? You want the ball, Cerberus?" The dog's 3 heads all cocked to the side, their growls softening into confused whimpers. She threw the ball. The middle head lunged for it, catching it in its massive jaws. It looked happy. Annabeth started playing fetch with a hellhound. "Go now!" she hissed at us. Grover and I didn't hesitate. We scrambled past the distracted beast through the easy death line. The spirits there didn't even notice us. Annabeth threw the ball one last time, a long throw into the darkness, and then sprinted past the dog before any of its 3 heads could realize what had just happened. We collapsed behind a security checkpoint, hearts pounding. We were in. Past Karen, past Cerberus. We were officially, truly inside the land of the dead. Spoken outro. Narrator/Percy. Narrator. We made it past the 3-headed dog. I honestly can't believe that worked. Don't forget to subscribe and come back next time to see if we can actually find Hades in this place. Of course, acknowledge. We are now deep in the heart of the underworld, and it's time to meet the Lord of the Dead. Here is the detailed voiceover script for Chapter 20. Chapter 20, I Battle My Jerk Relative. Spoken intro. Narrator/Percy. Narrator. Hey everyone, glad you could make it for this one. We're deep in the underworld now, and it's finally time to meet the man himself, Lord Hades. Intro music is deep, ominous, and orchestral with a sense of finality. It fades. Voiceover as Percy. Once we were past Cerberus, the true scale of the underworld hit us. We walked through the fields of Asphodel, a vast gray meadow stretching to the horizon, filled with millions of spirits shuffling aimlessly, their memories slowly fading to nothing. It was the afterlife for people who hadn't been good or bad, just average. It was profoundly depressing. In the distance, we could see the beautiful, gated community of Elysium, a valley of light and color where the heroes live forever. Annabeth stared at it, her eyes full of longing. On the other side was the fields of punishment, a wasteland of fire and torture. I could hear screams echoing from that direction, and I saw things I wish I could forget. As we were walking along the edge of a massive black canyon, something went wrong. The flying shoes Luke had given me, which Grover was wearing, went haywire. They sprouted their wings and started pulling him, kicking and screaming, towards the edge of the chasm. "It's Tartarus!" Annabeth screamed. "The pit!" The shoes were trying to drag Grover into the deepest, darkest part of the underworld. Annabeth and I grabbed his arms, digging our heels into the black sand. We managed to cut the shoes off his hooves just as they flew off his feet and vanished into the abyss. We collapsed, shaking. The shoes had been cursed. Luke, our friend, had tried to send me straight to Tartarus. The betrayal was real. We finally reached the Palace of Hades. It was a fortress of polished black obsidian with towering walls and green fires burning in braziers. We walked into the throne room. It was vast and cold, the floor made of bronze and the walls made of shadows. At the far end were two thrones. One, made of black marble, was empty. The other was carved from solid, fused human bones. And sitting on it was Hades. He wasn't a monster with horns. He was a god, 10 feet tall, with skin as pale as death and eyes like black holes. He wore black silk robes and a crown of braided gold. A presence of immense power and ancient cold radiated from him. My mother was standing beside his throne, shimmering and ghost-like, a prisoner. "You are brave to come here, son of Poseidon." Hades's voice was soft, but it filled the entire room. "But you are a fool. You have stolen my helm of darkness." I stared at him, confused. "You mean your hat? I didn't steal it." I held up the backpack Ares had given us. "I came for this. The Master Bolt." Hades' eyes narrowed. "I have no need for that cheap replica. I have my own problems. My helm of darkness was stolen. It is the source of my power. It allows me to become darkness. And I know you took it. You came here, pretending to bargain for your mother, to threaten me with Zeus's stolen toy." As he was speaking, the backpack on my shoulder grew heavier, impossibly heavy. I shrugged it off and unzipped it, and my blood turned to ice. Lying inside, nestled among our clothes, was a 2-foot-long cylinder of celestial bronze, crackling with arcs of pure, white-hot energy. Zeus's master bolt. It had been in the backpack the whole time. Ares had planted it on us. The whole quest was a setup. Ares had been working for someone else, not Hades. The voice in the pit, that was Kronos, the Lord of the Titans, stirring in his prison. He had used Ares to steal both the bolt and the helm, and framed me to start a war between my father and my uncles. "Liar!" Hades screamed, rising from his throne. He thought I had been hiding the bolt from him all along. "You have played me for a fool." He raised a hand, and the bones of the dead began to rise from the floor, forming an army of skeletons. We were trapped. Annabeth and Grover stood beside me, ready to fight, but we were hopelessly outnumbered. And then I remembered the pearls. I had 3. One for me, one for Annabeth, one for Grover. But my mother, she was right there. I could save her, but if I did, one of us would be left behind. The prophecy came back to me. You shall fail to save what matters most in the end. I looked at my mother's sad, shimmering form, and then at my friends who had followed me all the way to hell and back. I knew what I had to do. My mother would have wanted it this way. "I'm sorry," I whispered to her. "I will come back. I will find a way." I handed a pearl to Annabeth and one to Grover. "Smash them at your feet," I ordered. As Hades' army of the dead advanced, we threw the pearls down. They shattered, and a milky white sphere of energy instantly formed around each of us. The spheres lifted off the ground, pulling us upwards, away from the skeletal soldiers and the furious god of the dead. I saw my mother's face, a look of pride and sorrow, as we were ripped from the throne room, shooting back towards the world of the living. Spoken outro. Narrator/Percy. Narrator. Wow, what a chapter. We escaped, but we left my mom behind, and we're still holding the Master Bolt. Thanks for being here for that intense ride. Make sure you're back for the next one to see how we get out of this mess. Of course, acknowledged. We've escaped the underworld, but now it's time to face the God who sent us there. Here is the detailed voiceover script for Chapter 21. Chapter 21, I Settle My Tab. Spoken intro, Narrator/Percy. Narrator. Hey, thanks for being here for Chapter 21. We just escaped the underworld, but we're not out of the woods yet. Not by a long shot. Intro music is a tense, driving rock theme with the sounds of crashing waves and a roaring motorcycle. It fades. Voiceover as Percy. The pearls shot us out of the underworld and deposited us in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, about 100 yards from the Santa Monica shore. We swam to the beach, exhausted and defeated, only to find him waiting for us. Ares. He was leaning against his massive motorcycle, polishing his sunglasses, a smug look on his face. "Well, well," he said, "you're not dead." "You tried to kill us," I shot back, my anger boiling over. "You put the bolt in my backpack." Ares just laughed. "I didn't steal it, kid, but I did know who did. Ares always gets a whiff when a good war is brewing." He admitted it all. He had caught the original thief, taken both the bolt and Hades' helm of darkness, and then set us up. He was hoping a war between his father and his uncles would be the greatest fight in history, and he wanted a front row seat. He said he'd been getting ideas, whispers in his dreams, from a power in the pit that was encouraging the chaos. Kronos. "So you're a coward," I said. "You're just a puppet for someone else." His face hardened. "You got a death wish, punk?" "You want these items?" I said, holding up the backpack with the master bolt. "You'll have to fight me for them." I knew it was crazy. I was challenging a god. But I was done being a pawn in their games. Ares couldn't believe it. The god of war, being challenged by a 12-year-old kid. His pride wouldn't let him refuse. "All right, little hero," he sneered. "You want to fight? You got one." He told Annabeth and Grover to stay back. This was between us. We walked into the surf, the waves crashing around our ankles. The mortal world started to go fuzzy around the edges as the god of war prepared to unleash his power. A crowd of angry-looking bikers and gang members began to gather on the beach, drawn by Ares' aura of conflict. We fought. He was a master. Every swing of his massive sword was perfect, powerful. I was completely outmatched. But I had the ocean on my side. I used the water to dodge, to move faster. I tried to stay just out of his reach. The mortals on the shore couldn't see what was really happening. To them, thanks to the mist, it just looked like a crazy kid with a gun fighting a biker. The police even showed up, adding to the chaos. I knew I couldn't win a direct fight. I had to outthink him. As he lunged, I ducked under his sword and summoned the biggest wave I could muster. It crashed over him, throwing him off balance for just a split second. And in that second, I didn't try to strike his chest or his head. I did what a son of the sea god would do. I stabbed my sword downward and sliced his heel. Golden ichor, the blood of the gods, poured from his ankle. He roared in a mix of pain and pure fury. His true divine form began to emerge, a being of pure heat and light that would have vaporized everyone on the beach. But then it stopped. A cold, heavy presence fell over the beach, a darkness that seemed to swallow all sound. The same ancient, evil voice from my nightmares whispered in my mind. And I knew Ares heard it too. "Peace, Lord," it seemed to say. "Do not show them your true power. Not yet." The command from his master was absolute. The divine light faded, and Ares was just a wounded biker again, seething with impotent rage. "You have made a powerful enemy today, Percy Jackson," he hissed. He threw one last curse at me, promising that my sword would fail me when I needed it most. He left Hades' helm of darkness on the sand, then got on his motorcycle and roared away. Just as he vanished, 3 familiar figures descended from the sky. It was the Furies, but they weren't attacking. Electo, the creature I knew as Mrs. Dodds, bowed stiffly. They had seen the whole thing. They knew I wasn't the thief. I picked up the helm of darkness. "Return this to Lord Hades," I said. "Tell him I hold no grudges. Tell him we have a common enemy now." Electo took the helm, and the 3 of them disappeared back into the shadows. I had settled my tab with the Lord of the Dead, but I still had the bolt, and the summer solstice was tomorrow. I had to get it from Los Angeles to New York City by sundown. I had no idea how we were going to do it. Spoken outro. Narrator/Percy. Narrator. And that's how I settled my tab with the god of war. So, one enemy down, but now we have to get from LA to New York in just a few hours. No big deal, right? See you next time to find out if we make it. Chapter 22. The Prophecy Comes True. Well, we made it to the last chapter of the book. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this whole crazy adventure. Let's finish this thing. Intro music is epic, triumphant, and orchestral. It fades into the sound of a jet engine. Voiceover as Percy. With my name cleared with the Lord of the Dead, my face miraculously vanished from the mortal news. We were no longer fugitives, which meant we could do the one thing I had been dreading all quest. We could fly. We took a red-eye flight from Los Angeles to New York. I was terrified the whole way, clutching my seat, positive that Zeus was going to blast us out of the sky. But we landed safely. We had made it. I went to the Empire State Building alone. Annabeth and Grover waited for me in the lobby. I took the elevator to the 600th floor. When the doors opened, I wasn't in an office. I was on a narrow stone walkway in the clouds leading to a city of glittering white and gold palaces perched on the peak of a mountain. Mount Olympus. It was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. I walked into the main throne room. It was vast enough to hold a stadium, and sitting on two massive thrones were the gods I'd come to see. Zeus, king of the gods, and my father, Poseidon. I bowed low. I presented Zeus with his master bolt. I told them everything. About Ares, the helm of darkness, the cursed shoes, and the voice in the pit. I told them about Kronos, the Titan Lord trying to rise again. Zeus wouldn't hear it. He refused to believe his father could be a threat. But Poseidon looked at me with his sea-green eyes, and I could tell he believed me. The two gods argued, but in the end, Zeus agreed the war was off. Hades had his helm back. As thanks for returning his bolt, Zeus agreed to let me live, which was nice of him. After Zeus left, I finally had a moment alone with my father. It was awkward. He looked sad, full of regret. He told me my mother had returned home, alive and well. He told me he was sorry I was born, not because he didn't want me, but because being my father had put a target on my back. He called me a true son of the sea god, and then he was gone. I went home, to my mom's apartment, and she was there, alive. She hugged me and I cried. She told me she had left Smelly Gabe for good. She was finally free. I told her about the package I had sent her from New Jersey, Medusa's head. I told her she could do whatever she wanted with it. She just nodded, a new steely look in her eyes. When I came back later, Gabe was gone, and in his place in the middle of the living room was a new ugly statue that looked suspiciously like him holding a bag of chips. My mom had sold it to an art gallery. I spent the rest of the summer at Camp Half-Blood, but this time, I wasn't an outcast. I was a hero. I was Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon, the kid who had journeyed to the underworld and faced the god of war. I had a home. On the last day of summer, we had our award ceremony. We each got a special bead for our camp necklaces to remember the summer. Mine was black, with a shimmering green trident in the center. Grover came to say goodbye. He had his searcher's license now, and he was heading out to find the great god Pan. Annabeth was leaving too. She was going to try and live with her mortal father and stepmom again to see if things could be different. We promised we'd see each other next summer. I was planning on leaving too, but Luke invited me into the woods for one last training session. He tossed me a Coke and we talked for a bit, but then he started talking about a new golden age, about tearing down the old gods. His voice was full of the same bitterness I'd heard before. Then he snapped his fingers. A tiny hole opened in the ground, and a scorpion, black and hairy with a stinger that glistened with poison, crawled out. A pit scorpion. Its venom could kill you in 60 seconds. "You were the one," I said, my blood running cold. "You stole the bolt and the helm." He admitted it all. He served Kronos. He thought the gods were terrible, selfish rulers. He wanted to destroy them. The scorpion lunged and stung me on the hand. The pain was immediate, a burning fire spreading up my arm. Luke watched, a cold smile on his face, and then he vanished. I was dying, and as the poison clouded my vision, the prophecy finally made sense. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend. Luke, and you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. And I hadn't failed to save my mom. I had failed to stop Luke. I had let a traitor an agent of the greatest evil the world had ever known, escape. I collapsed, but somehow I was found by nymphs and carried back to the big house. Kieran saved me, nursing me back to health with nectar and his knowledge of healing. When I was better, I had a choice to make. Stay at camp year-round or go home to my mom for the school year. I chose to go home, but I promised Kieran I would be back next summer because Luke was still out there. Kronos was still rising, and I was a hero now. My fight was just beginning. Spoken outro. Narrator/Percy. Narrator. And that's the end of The Lightning Thief. What a ride. Thank you so much for listening and coming on this journey with me. I hope you'll join me for the next part of the story. Until then, stay safe out there. I'd like to take this time to personally address the audience. I am here to grow a community and bring value to each individual viewer. My goal is to be a trusted account to recommend and produce content in a variety of avenues, offering the right balance of entertainment and learning. I want to move towards monetizing this channel, which means growing and creating a real community. I am full of ideas, and I would love for criticism and more minds to help create the best content in this modern world. If you would like to support what I'm doing, it is as simple as liking, subscribing, and even sharing videos, while you can also support by commenting ideas. Another thing is, if you are looking for employment, I have many entrepreneurship plans in the future that will need hiring, but that is a big further in the future. For now, I hope you enjoy my favorite childhood series.